guys, Fru here. Welcome to the channel. On this channel, we make videos around technology tips, career advice, and inspiration, helping you elevate your career, earn more money, so you can live a better life. So guys, in today's video, we're going to be talking about 2020. Today's video is going to be a presentation. We're going to be giving some of the newsworthy items that has happened within 2020 that a lot of us might have missed. And why is this important? Well, we know to say 2020 was an interesting year is an understatement. This is one of those years where a lot of people, their reality has been turned upside down given the pandemic. And almost every headline on page one consistently was talking about the pandemic. But guess what? There is page one, there is page two, there is page three, and there is page four of a lot of the news media. So what was being talked about in page two or on page three or on page four? That's what we want to do here into this video. Now, just because those did not make it to page one doesn't mean it wasn't important. And there was a lot of interesting news items, newsworthy items that happened in 2020, but it just wasn't talked about because for the right reasons, a lot of people were talking about the pandemic. All right. And so what we want to do here is go below the surface, go below the pandemic, and to say these are some of the things that happened, even though we didn't talk about it a lot, but it's something that as tech professionals, we definitely want to pay attention to those as we go into the next year or into the years ahead. And I hope everyone is staying safe during this period. I know these are challenging times. I hope you're staying safe. And hopefully the next year that's coming is going to be a year of blessings, a year of success, and a year where, we're going to be in a better position than where we are today. So that said, if you do like this video, I really highly encourage you to share the video as you watch with somebody that might get value out of it. They might be in the technology space, they might not be, but please do share the video with somebody that might get value out of it if you find value from the video. And that means to see that, you gotta watch to the end. So please do watch the video to the end. And then if you like it, show it by liking the video, sharing this with somebody that might get value out of it. And that will mean a lot for us, especially for the YouTube algorithms. So that said, before we dive in and switch gears here into our presentation, I want to share with you a little bit of a jest. In the times of difficulties like this, any joke or light-hearted moment is very much welcome. And this was coming from a friend I was talking with very recently. And, this friend of mine was, swearing that, governments should officially remove a year from everybody's birth certificate and rewind it 1 year back. Because it seems like, people got older, but they just lost 2020. They couldn't travel, they couldn't celebrate, they couldn't realize their dreams, and it seems like it's a wasted year. And so why should that year be reflected on the birth certificate if that could just be moved back? So if somebody was 20 years old, come 2021, they should go back and officially be 19 years back. All right, because they've lost 1 year. Now, I know that was a little bit of a joke. That's probably not going to happen. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But, in the times of difficulties like this, I'm sure people are thinking of a lot of interesting things. So that said, let's go and dive into our presentation for today. So these are the 10 top newsworthy tech industry headlines of 2020 other than COVID that you might have missed. You might have missed some of these things. It might have flown under the radar, but I can guarantee you that these are things that have been consequential in the tech space. And even if it didn't make it to page one, like we talked about, these are still things that as a tech professional, you want to pay attention to these things. You want to be aware of what's going on and take the necessary learnings or precautions or whatever you need to do to ensure that these things don't just fall on the wayside and you're very much aware of them. Now, this list as we go in could be a really long list. If I wanted to, I could make a list of 100, newsworthy items in 2020 that might have been missed. This could be a long list. Everything from newsworthy items in AI, newsworthy items in space travel, newsworthy items in security, newsworthy items in career or just the market and technology. And it could really get to be a long list. But what I've done here is compile this and really say, let's get to the top essential ones. And so these are the ones that you want to pay very close attention to. All right, that said, we're going to dive right in. I have links to all of this in the description below. So if you click on the description below, you're going to see a link to this presentation directly. And so you can go to the specific websites and see what the news item was about. If you miss something, you can pay attention to it. Now, if I miss something in compiling on this list, I want to hear from you guys. So just jump into the comment section below, share what I might have missed, what you thought was newsworthy to you, so that other people can get exposed to that information. So again, this is not an exhaustive list, and this is in no chronological order. So I'm just going to give you some of the things that were very important this year that you just might have missed. And as a technology professional, this is something that we all should be aware of. So that said, I'm going to start with the very first one here, which is TikTok sells itself off to a US company. So coming into 2020, before we had the COVID, we know that the US administration had really been, had been putting a lot of pressure on TikTok to either do one thing or change or be banned. And there was a lot of nuance and a lot of political speak going on around TikTok. And it so happened that, let me close this. It so happened that TikTok almost got banned in the US. And if you're not familiar with TikTok, it's a social media app for the young generation. They use it to share funny videos. And the implications of this are huge, right? Because TikTok was founded in China, and then it moved over to, it has a lot of US consumers. And the fear from a geopolitical perspective was, there was a lot of data about US consumers in China, residing in China. And now, what does that mean from the perspective of the Chinese government being able to use that to spy on US citizens? So this is not just about technology, it's really about politics. It's really about geopolitical kind of situations that are going on. And this could affect a lot of people, because when you set a precedence with something like TikTok and you're banning TikTok out of the US because it's a Chinese company, what happens to all the other companies that have users in China? All right, or what happens if China tries to retaliate? And so this was a very big story in 2020. And in case you missed it, it happened that TikTok wasn't banned. It almost got banned, and it got bought out by Oracle. So Microsoft was in the running to buy it, Walmart was in the running to buy it, but Oracle eventually bought it. And if you're not familiar with Oracle is a cloud database vendor. They're known for their database. They have a lot of other products, but a lot of people would think about databases for Oracle and their Oracle ERP systems and all of that, with Larry Ellison, who is the big guy on top of Oracle. So in September, TikTok got bought by Oracle and now became technically a US company. There's probably a lot going on behind the scenes, but TikTok got bought by Oracle and now it's a US company. But again, this came from the pressure from the US government. Now, so going to number 2, what we see here is the flip phone continuing to shine, and the EU putting a lot of pressure to standardize chargers. So let's take a look at the very first article here. What this article tells us is Galaxy coming up with a phone which is basically a flip phone. They've been trying to do this over the years, but it seems like this generation of the flip phone that they came up with seems a lot promising. The reviews seem to be very good, and that can tell us where the industry is going. If we begin to see flip phones like this that are working and they're really great, guys, this might just be where the future is going. And that's why this is a very important trend to pay attention to as technology professionals. I remember at one point where everybody was talking about Nokia. Nokia had a phone you flip. It was the old form of flip phones. And then BlackBerry came. So instead of flipping your phone, you had your screen and then you had the keyboard right on the same block of the mobile. And then, of course, you had iPhone came in and literally changed that upside down. It put the keyboard more virtual. And so that was kind of interesting. But now what we're seeing is that iPhone changed it. Android caught up with iPhone, and phones kind of increasingly got bigger and bigger. And now you can only get phones so big to a point where either you're working with a tablet in your hand, or you're going to find a way to reduce the form factor of that phone and then increase it back when you need it. And this is where the flip phones seem to be a very promising. You can literally fold the phone. It becomes really small. And if you wanted it, you can flip it open and flip it back open. The screen flips open as well. And there is a lot of engineering there, I'm sure. So a very important advancement, a very important trend going on in the industry to pay attention to. So here it says Samsung announced, and this was back in July, Galaxy Z Flip 5G. Of course, the phone is having 5G, which retails at about almost 1,500 US dollars. So very interesting one. Now the next thing from this is EU wants interchangeable chargers, right? And if you're not familiar with this, is we've kind of gone through, if you have a phone, your phone has a charger, we've gotten through the different types of USB chargers all the way to, I think, what we call USB type C now, that has a universal head. But if you are in the Android side of things, the standard USB charger for your Android devices and a lot of devices in that ecosystem. But guess what? On the iPhone side, on the iOS side, they've been on the whole different side of things, right? They've been on the Fire charger. All right. And so this means if I have an Android phone, I can't take my charger from my Android phone and charge my iPhone or my iOS phone, because those two are not compatible. And you have all these phones out there and people are being forced to use different chargers. It's just an overall pain. Now, what the EU here is trying to do is to regulate so that people or these companies that are making these phones are going to use a standard charger for their phones. Now, if you're on the Android side, it might not affect you as much because they already have the USB type C, which is pretty standard. The folks that are on the different side will be the folks with iOS and Apple kind of products. And so this might mean that Apple would have to change its standard of charging to meet what folks on the Android are using, and that could be very interesting. So if you're familiar Android, this is the iPhone type of chargers they have. This is the type of chargers you have on the Android ecosystem. And if you're gonna standardize this, somebody's gonna have to give, and I don't think it's the Android that's giving. It seems like iPhone might have to change to meet this. So a very interesting update, just to be aware of from an industry perspective. And the implications of this, I don't think are massive from an enterprise perspective, but again, this is a big shift. All phones now, you can charge them in a standard fashion, even if it's just convenience. Well, people are gonna take that convenience. So something to be aware of. All right. So that said, let's dive into the third thing here that was very newsworthy in the news, and this has to do with the continuous growth of 5G. I know I've made a lot of videos talking about 5G, the power of 5G, why is 5G important, the speed, the benefits of 5G, with full duplex, millimeter waves, and a lot of things that 5G is going to do to allow for increased bandwidth. And so what we're seeing is that a lot of companies here are kind of partnering now to enable 5Gs. They're bringing 5Gs into their phone. They're putting up 5G towers. Not as fast as most people would want, but it's definitely going up. All right. So here we have Google, AT&T partner on 5G enablement. So we know Google, they're massive when it comes to the internet, and they have a lot of incentive for 5G to succeed, because if 5G succeed and people are on the internet a lot, guess what? You're going to be browsing web pages, and that means more money coming into Google and more opportunity for them to sell you ads. And so they're partnering with AT&T to increase 5G enablement and adoption and really grow that frontier. So this is something that we're going to continue seeing, that we saw a lot in 2020. It's a big newsworthy item, because people say the US has kind of fallen behind with 5G, and with advancements like this, that means that hopefully it doesn't fall behind as much, and maybe can catch up with China and some of the other places that are really far ahead with 5G technology. So that said, you might not be using 5G, but just be rest assured, 5G is poised to be here, and it's coming really fast with some of these partnerships that we see happening, some of these strategic partnerships. All right, now next thing that we have on this list here is going a little bit out of technology into more of the social justice kind of space. And what we saw happen in 2020, and almost everybody in some form or another got exposed to this, is social justice, racial issues, and Black Lives Matter, which was an organization that was formed to address or to champion some of this, what we saw. And so in here, we know that it started with a killing of a black person out in Minnesota, literally in my backyard, back of my city, and that sparked a lot of protests and a lot of calls for justice. And so that was a very big big theme in 2020. And people might say, well, this is not technology. On this particular article I'm showing here is more of Jacob Blake, which was another individual that was killed as well, part of the social justice movement in 2020. Now, folks might say, well, but Fro, you gotta stick to technology. What you're showing me here has nothing to do with technology. But guys, if you went through 2020, social justice was huge. I know a lot of organizations, they saw this and they're taking actions to bring in diversity into their teams, to put in programs to help. All right, because again, technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. Technology is people that are working and doing this all day long. And so with the social justice movement that's going on, it affects technology, because if your workers are coming in and they're not happy and they have to go out and protest, it affects everybody. And so you can see that organizations really were paying attention to this. I don't have specific articles of some of the changes that organizations were making, but a lot of them were coming out, donating to social justice causes, and just trying to be a part of the solution. And this went all the way to the NBA, coming up and using t-shirts, and a lot of people were using their platforms to bring light into this. So again, not technology per se, not direct hardcore bits, ones and zeros, but again, something that affects us all, and was very, very important. It was a very important movement through 2020 that we all saw. Now, next one on the list here we have is hacking. All right, I was gonna separate this into two, but I thought I'll put it back into one list and just call it hacking. The very first one, and people might have missed this, was the Twitter hack that happened. And then we now have the more recent one here as of making this in December, which is the SolarWinds hack. Now, let's talk about the Twitter hack. This happened a while back around July, where some individual was able to get into the Twitter account of some famous people, bear with me, of some famous people. And basically what they did was they put in a message like this. Like, for example, this one here is with Elon Musk, and they said, oh, I'm feeling generous because of COVID-19, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. Basically, they put in a Bitcoin address and have people send them money. That was just a hack, and they took all the Bitcoin money, as far as I know, ran away with it. And they did it for Bill Gates. They did it for a lot of other folks. So, and this was just a precursor to the hacking that we saw in 2020. Now, next on that was the SolarWinds. As a matter of fact, this is still kind of ongoing as of making this video in December 2020. This was a massive breach. I've made a video about this on the channel, where there was a company called FireEye. That company got hacked, and then what they realized was FireEye was using this company called SolarWinds, and SolarWinds was hacked. And in one of their patches, in one of their updates, somebody put in a malicious code, and so anybody who got the update from SolarWinds got exposed in their systems. And the US government, a lot of institutions, big companies, Microsoft, they all use SolarWinds product. And so this is a massive hack that really, they say if 2020 was really a bad year, this kind of put the icing on the cake to really make it even a tough year for a lot of people, a lot of organizations. And as far as we know, this is still kind of ongoing. There are people that are blaming China, there are people who are blaming Russia, and there are people that have no idea what's going on. But again, huge. I've always said, as we go into 2020 and the years ahead, cybersecurity or security in general will be massive. All right, because companies have all this data. They have a lot of stake in data and information. And if people want to steal that information, it's not going to be a good day. So investing in security, cybersecurity would be huge. And breaches like this goes to reemphasize the fact that cybersecurity will be huge as we go into the next year or so. And it was a huge part of 2020. Now, next piece from this we have is, of course, we're going to talk about politics here. And for this one, we have Joe Biden becoming the president-elect of the United States. And in 2021, he's going to become the president for sure. So there was an election. He became president-elect. And this is huge. Again, politics here. You might say, Fru, why are you talking about politics? Talk about technology. But guess what? Joe Biden is going to become president. He's going to have his own idea of laws and rules and regulations that he wants to pass, or people of his cabinet will have laws they want to pass. And those laws, when they're passed, will, guess what, impact you, would impact your organization in terms of your career, in terms of laws, CCPR, GDPR, CCPA, all those things, right? There's no CCPR, there's CCPA. And so just being aware that, having a new president on the Democratic side and not on the Republican side, that might mean a lot for all of us in terms of the laws, in terms of the regulations that are passed. I'm pretty confident that after this SolarWinds attack, there would be new laws that will be passed, or there will be investigations, or there will be probes to say, how did this happen? How can we prevent this from happening? What was stolen? How come the NSA was affected? How come NASA was affected? How come all these agencies were affected? How can that be prevented from a cybersecurity perspective? All right. And so the new president is going to have his own ideas. Now, I'm not talking here about politics, but just something that happened in 2020. We all saw it, and it was huge. And that the repercussions of this might not be felt until 2021 and beyond, but just something to be very aware of, that this was a newsworthy item from a tech industry perspective. Now, next on the list we have here is remote working zooms forward. All right, I think I kind of had to throw in a little bit of Zoom here. Hope you guys give me kudos for coming up with that. Zooms forward. All right, so we saw that COVID literally has made us live in a world that's a new reality for a lot of people, especially tech professionals. Back in the day, you would go to an office, you drive to a building, and that's where a lot of us were working. But now people are going remote, virtual work. And we saw here, Zoom is kind of like the poster child of this new world. This is a company, they have a virtual communication platform, and they literally almost, I don't know how much they grew, but it was massive. And not only is Zoom becoming massive, but a lot of organizations are going down this route of supporting virtual working. All right, you can sit from your home using teleconferencing and virtual meetings, interact with your organization and your colleagues from any part of the world. So a very interesting trend, or a very interesting item that we saw in 2020, and this is probably going to continue as we go into 2021. Everything from just working, education, medicine, all are going online, and this was huge. So remote work is going to was big in 2020 that we saw, and as we go into the years ahead, will continue to be big. Now, next thing that we have here is 2020 was really a year of the stock market, which is kind of almost surprising for this to even make it to a list, where we have a year that saw a massive a crash in the stock market back in February or March, around that time period. And then in the same year, we're having the stock market reaching heights, or historic heights, reaching 30,000 points. And so it's definitely been an interesting year from a stock market perspective. And one of the things we saw here is huge, massive IPOs from a technology space. So a lot of tech organizations went public, and they saw massive, we're talking about record-breaking IPOs that happened this year, riding the wave of the huge stock market that we saw. Number one on that was Snowflake. Huge IPO. It was just massive, right? Warren Buffett invested in that. Salesforce has an investment in that, and it was very huge. We saw Zoom Infos going public, Airbnb. It was just an overall massive year of IPOs. Now, who knows if this is going to continue into the future, or what exactly was driving all of this? I can't tell you for sure. I'm not a stock market expert, but it was just something that, as a technology professional, it definitely happened in 2020. We all saw it, right? There were people that saw the massive Snowflake IPO, saw the massive Zoom Infos IPO, and that was one of the big characteristics that happened in 2020, something to be aware of. Now, next thing we're going to see here on the list is now going more into the hardware side. All right, so on the hardware side, we saw this organization, a company, NVIDIA, a US-based company, buys ARM, and it dethrones, as part of that purchase, dethrones Intel as the most valuable US chip maker. So Intel makes a lot of chips, Nvidia makes a lot of chips and GPUs and all of that. And Intel was number one, and then I think Nvidia and then ARM were the other players. But now Nvidia bought ARM, becomes number one, and dethrones Intel. Intel almost, my laptop, a lot of things is using Intel, right? The Intel chips. And so Nvidia really coming up there, dethroning Intel. It's huge. It's huge from the industry perspective. So this was kind of the news of that merger between Nvidia and ARM to dethrone Intel. But ARM and Nvidia, these are not going to be the biggest chip makers in the world. So we know that according to this, it's TSMC, which I'm not familiar what company that is, and Samsung are the biggest. So this merger would put them at number 3, and number 3 in the global perspective, but number 1 for the US. So Nvidia merged with ARM would become the number 1 chip maker. Intel becomes number 2, but worldwide is Samsung. I think Samsung is from Korea, and I'm not sure TSMC where that is from. So a huge, interesting merger, because almost everything we do in tech is chip driven, and from your servers, your laptop, even phone and watches, they all use chips. And so what this means and where this is gonna go in terms of Intel and what they do is just an interesting thing to pay attention to, because it happened in 2020. And we even hear out of this, just to add a little bit of flavor to this, that Microsoft is looking at making their own chips. And that what we've seen is from the cloud computing space, a lot of organizations are going to the cloud, and Microsoft with the Azure platform has a huge cloud infrastructure. And if you were buying servers to use on-prem and put in your house or in your data center, you can buy chips from anywhere. You can buy chips from Intel and just use the Microsoft software. But guess what? If you're bringing your computer to Microsoft and running on their infrastructure, why does Microsoft have to go out and buy chips from someone else to put it in their data center to allow for cloud computing, right? So they could just make their own chips and use it in their own data centers, since they're going to be running these massive cloud computing data centers. And so if Microsoft is really looking to go in and make their own chips, that even makes it more interesting. All right, now they can design their chips to work for their software. And what does that mean for Intel? What does that mean for Nvidia? What does that mean for all these other companies? Just overall interesting from the hardware chip space. All right, next thing that we see, let's clean this up a little bit on our list here, is actually the last but not the least is IBM. IBM split 109-year-old company to focus on cloud growth. So a lot of people in the technology space, IBM used to be the behemoth, and they've made a lot of blunders over the years, right? Everything from them focusing on mainframes and allowing Windows and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates to swing by and take charge of the personal computing space. Meanwhile, IBM was just focused on mainframes, and that hasn't really served them very well, because mainframes did not win, right? A lot of people went with the personal computer route, and now we're at the point where the tide seems to be switching a little bit again, where people are going away from personal computers and they're trying to run in SaaS applications, going back to the cloud. And IBM is kind of at that position where people always think of IBM, they think of old school technology, and so the company is trying to reinvent itself. It's been trying over the years with Watson and some of the things that IBM is trying to do with big data and all of that, and some of their databases. But people still see IBM as an old legacy company that organizations would use because they can't get rid of them. And so what IBM seems to be trying to do here is reinvent itself and really focus on the cloud. And what we've seen here is folks like AWS. What we've seen here is folks like Azure. These guys, these organizations, and even GCP, Google, that brought in Thomas Curran to run their GCP platforms. What we're seeing here is the future basically is in the cloud, and organizations are pivoting massively into the cloud. And IBM, hopefully they've learned a lot of their lessons. They don't want to be left behind, doing whatever they can to pivot into the cloud. And so what they're doing here is they're looking at their business, breaking it all up to focus on the core business of IBM in the cloud. Like, think about AWS. That's a cash machine for Amazon, the company. That's almost what makes Jeff Bezos part of his billions. So IBM wants to take a slice of that pie. And so they're really going to be focusing on the cloud and cloud growth. And so they're splitting up their company. So this would be an interesting shake up in the tech space. What happens when IBM goes all in on the cloud. Right now, from a cloud perspective, they are small. They're very small. You have AWS at number 1, Azure maybe number 2, GCP number 3. Then you have some of the niche players like Oracle, SAP, Alibaba. They all have their cloud. So IBM is really trying to position itself in there and take a slice of that pie. So very interesting, very interesting. All right, guys, so there you have it. I think we can go on and on with this list. Like I told you guys, this is a list that could be a really long list. 2020 was an eventful year. It was. We know everyone talks about COVID, but a lot happened beyond COVID. This is just scratching the surface of what happened from a technology space. From TikTok, flip phones, social justice, hacking, new president, remote work, IPOs, hardware reshuffle, companies are going to the cloud. And so it was definitely a very eventful year for a technology professional. And hopefully this gave you a reminder or a refresher, because it just felt like the year just kind of went by. It felt like the year kind of went by. And we shouldn't forget about the year. A lot of things did happen, and this is what we've done here. We've cataloged it for you guys, and hopefully this was helpful. All right, guys, so there you have it. We've seen top 10 newsworthy tech industry headlines of 2020. A lot of this is a refresher. We hope that this gives you a reminder of what 2020 was about, and some of this will have impacts going into 2021. And so if these are the things that are going to impact 2021, again, it's good to go into the new year with this refresher. So there you have it, guys. Thanks for joining me for this presentation on this day, the New Year's Eve of 2020. I think the countdown is going to be happening here pretty soon to break us into 2021. Hopefully you found this valuable. Hopefully you got a lot of exciting reminders. Just to bring this back to the screen, a lot of exciting reminders, a lot of refreshers out of this, and got some nuggets out of it. We do know the year was a tough and challenging year for everybody. So hopefully this was a good reminder. Just watching the clock here, as soon we're going to be counting into 2021. I just want to take this opportunity, everyone, to thank you sincerely for the year of 2020, especially on this channel. It was a great year. I think in terms of the growth we saw, and making videos, educating, entertaining, inspiring, with technology tips, career advice, and inspiration, and having you join and watch these videos. I make these videos out for fun, because it's an opportunity for me to learn. And I'm always as amazed when I got folks that are watching and liking and getting value out of it. Just something that I do out of fun, and something that helps me do research, because I want to learn what also happened. And so that's why I make these videos. So thank you for joining me, being to the end, supporting the channel, and seeing the growth. I don't know what 2021 is going to bring. I do know 2020 was a great year for the channel. I do hope that this growth continues into 2021, and whatever 2021 holds for me or for the channel. All right, guys, so there you have it. Thank you again. I know the clock is gonna count down here. I really want to wish you happy holidays, happy New Year's in advance whenever you're watching this video, that whatever your goals and your dreams are for 2021, those all come into fruition. Again, thanks for watching. This has been Threelly. I'll see you next time.